no, it's being recorded. Hide the internet.
The government's never gonna get me alive.
Yeah. All right. So, how's everyone doing?
Doing great.
Pretend.
Let me make sure I have chat open this time. Can someone in chat just say something real quick? Oh, never mind. Wait, I see it. There we go. I'll keep chat relatively big this time so I don't accidentally not see it till like halfway into the lecture. And let me get the rest of you being nice and big over here, seeing all your beautiful faces. Beautiful. Okay.
I'm just having multiple monitors.
Yep. Kawaii Desu and everything. All right, cool. All right, so today we're going to be talking about meaningful choice of game design. So this is a very important subject. And as one of, I think it was Kirk that was talking to me just a few minutes ago in the student Discord. And you're kind of jumping ahead saying like, I have this game idea, I want to do it, and this and that, and rainbows and unicorns, and cool. Perfectly fine. I don't want to discourage any of you from starting to think of your ideas, but I want to wait a little bit to answer some of those specific questions because a lot of what you should and should not do is going to be kind of answered from today. Because it's all going to be about meaningful choice and what that means for game design and what I'm looking for and what I want you to start thinking about. So,
is that what I...
So, there are going to be one or two things in the slides that I normally would have in a classroom, but I can't do here. So normally I would have someone play the game LCR. And LCR is a game that you can buy like at Walgreens or like any drugstore, like when you're like in the checkout lane. You see like this little tube that has this. And this is a I'm sorry, say again?
We're happy you made it.
Can you speak up a little bit because you're really low?
Oh, you're not talking to us.
There, I'll just crank my volume, whatever.
But yeah, that was by accident.
All right, but yeah, so LCR is a game that you can just get like at any generic checkout lane, Walmart, Target, whatever. So this game is really dirt simple. You have 3 coins given in front of you, and you have 3 dice. The dice have an L, C, and R on it. Every time you roll a dice, you do exactly what the dice say. You roll an L, one of your chips goes to the left. If you roll R, one of your chips go to the right. If you roll a C, it goes to the center. No one gets the center until the last player's in. You keep doing that over and over until one player is left surviving. Now, there are dots on there. The dots represent neutral, which means nothing happens. You roll a dot, it just means that you don't move your chips anymore. So I know some of you are thinking, well, what happens when I'm down to 2 chips or 1 chip? You only roll 2 or 1 dice. You only roll as many chips to the dice you have. So if you have beyond 3 chips or 3 chips or more, you always roll 3 dice. If you have less than 3 chips, then you only roll as many dice to the chips that you have. And then once you're knocked out, you're technically not out of the game because technically somebody from your left or your right can give you chips on their turn because they roll dice too. Last person in the round with chips is the winner of the game. Now, the reason I have everybody play that is because usually one person's very smug and they're like, yeah, I won. Yeah, I did it. And I always ask,
meaningful choice whatsoever.
Well, I always ask, well, how'd you win? It's always my way of stumping you. It's like, well, how did you win? And they're like, I rolled good. And I'm like, can you write that in a biography and explain to me how you rolled good? And they just get stumped when I say that. And I'm like, well, think of it like from an athlete's point of view. Like if you ask someone, how did you get good at being a professional basketball player other than being tall?
I swung well.
Yeah.
As you can see, I paid for weighted dice.
And it's kind of like the idea is like, I want you to start analyzing like what is skill. And that's kind of the point of that whole subject. So I'm giving you the quick answer of like, I would kind of dissect and ask the person that wins, well, why did you win? And they can never give me an answer, and that's my point. When there's luck factors, there's no way to give a discernible answer how you win. There are strategies you can say that you did, but it's not something you can mimic. It's just pure luck factors. And this is kind of what all today's subject is about meaningful choice. So that's kind of giving you that brief explanation of that because normally we would have this in class. So, All right. So this is a classroom discussion point that I kind of want to talk about, and I want to kind of just hear a couple people's ideas. What is a game that you played a lot of? I already heard some people talking about it before class even started, but
do multiplayer games count?
I want to hear about a game that you've played, and why did you play a game so much? It could be a new game, or it could be an old game that you grew up playing. I just want to know, why did you play the game so much? Give me a quick explanation.
Borderlands 2.
Okay, sure. So why Borderlands 2?
Well, at first, I started playing the game because I actually loved the art style of the game, of how it was designed. And then as the game continued, I just like fell in love with the game mechanics, the game design, as well as like the guns of the game, the storyline, the plot, and like all of it was so well designed. Like it tied together really well that you couldn't just be fixated on one point of the game. It was just like you're in it over and over. And even if you played the game from start to finish, you just wanted to keep going at it because had that like, factor, that feeling, that connection that a lot of players, wouldn't get.
It also has a big humor factor. It was really
fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It like covers so many bases of,
So you would say that the humor is what kept the game going?
That's one of them, yeah.
I'd say that's a big part.
Okay. Yeah. But
it wouldn't have been Borderlands without Claptrap.
Right.
It would have not even been Borderlands for the art style if you really want my candid opinion on it, because I saw the project when it was before Borderlands. I worked indirectly in that project before it was Borderlands. It was just a generic shooter. It was the art style that really changed a lot, and then it was the writing later. It did save it, but the writing really wasn't there in the first game. Like, if you really want to be technical, it wasn't. So it took the second game for it to really get launched off the ground. But
it's kind of still not even there in the third game. It's there, but not nearly as much as 2.
No, it's not. That's we're kind of dissecting the wrong thing here. The thing that kept the game going was the initial factor. The initial factor of the loop. It had a very good gameplay loop that had you constantly engage with it over and over, which is the weapons. And the weapons had a lot of interesting, funny effects. So it used its humor to keep you going with the game, but the gameplay loop was finding new humorous guns that did more humorous things as the game went on. So Borderlands.
That sounds a lot like Enter the Gungeon.
Yes, Enter the Gungeon's almost identical.
Gungeon's a lot of fun.
Enter the Gungeon's identical. If you really were to boil it down from a game design mechanic,
like one of the guns is just straight up the letter R and shoots the whole alphabet.
It just says bullet.
Yeah.
Enter the Gungeon's a game that doesn't take itself serious, and it's amazing gameplay. I want to hear another one. Someone else.
A game
favorite Final Fantasy.
World.
One of the games I played the most, Rainbow Six Siege.
Okay, I usually hear the same things every month, so I want to hear something a little bit different.
RimWorld.
Which one?
RimWorld on Steam.
Okay, I haven't heard that one in a while. Why that game?
RimWorld is a interactive storytelling game, is how we pitched it. It was made by one dude originally. Basically, you just have a survival of colonists. They land on a rim world, essentially, and you've got to survive from the ground up with very few starting resources. The reason I really like it is because it is extremely unpredictable. 1 second you get like a herd of deer roll through and you can farm them, and then the second you're getting raided by a bunch of raiders from a rival faction, and then they take half your colonists and then they kidnap them and you have like one guy left. Or you get a bunch of people that come in and you make them all prisoners and then you harvest their organs and sell them on the black market. It's like, what do you do in this game? And it's like very simple like graphics, but just the whole fact that the whole game was made to tell a story from start to finish. It wasn't, here's your goal to survive. It was, how does your story end?
Okay.
What is your story from beginning to
end?
But
it still is a survival-based game.
Essentially, yes.
It just kind of has a beginning, middle, and narrative of it. So it gives you closure.
Right.
That's an interesting take on it. Usually most survival games are just like, how long can you survive? The same thing. I haven't heard of this game, so I'm going to look into this one. Usually when I hear story, I always set off a red flag of like, hold on, that sounds very linear. But from what you're explaining, this sounds like the Stanley Parable, but like a more survival-esque version of it. And for those of you who have not played the Stanley Parable, I would highly recommend for everyone to play that game when you get a chance. It is a relatively cheap game you can get on Steam, and it is a narrative game, but it's not a narrative game. That's what makes it
so many good endings.
I'm going to pop the big pin in the room right now. What I don't like narrative games. Not because I don't find them fun. I just don't find them to be game design. I find them to be interactive stories. I'd rather go watch a movie. So Detroit Becoming Human,
I agree.
The Walking Dead, the Batman series.
Telltale games, pretty much.
Yes. Telltale games.
And I enjoy, don't get me wrong, I've played all of them. I enjoy them. I actually really enjoyed Fables because I read the comics years ago. But
A Wolf Among Us is a great game.
But my point is that the same choices in that game give you illusion of choice. So a great
Mhm.
example, and I'm ruining like a 10-year-old game for all of you, so sorry. But in the Walking Dead game, the main protagonist in that game has a very big thing that happens to him at the end. He gets bitten by a zombie. So, oh no, the main character's going to die. He's going to turn to a zombie. So there's an interesting thing that happens at that point. You have a choice given to you. Keep the infected arm, chop off the infected arm. Down the middle, 50-50 split of what people did. 50% of people chopped off the arm, 50% of people left their arm on, because it pretty much ended the same way. No matter what choice you made, the character still dies. The character still dies in the end. It's still Clementine that shoots you at the very end of the game. It's a big, big, like, emotional thing that they did. It gave you an illusion the chop off your arm would save the character, and it does not. And that's kind of my point, is there's a lot of games that give you an illusion of choice. So I'm very hesitant when I ask, why do you like this game? And I hear the story is what always draws you in. And story is a part of game design, but it shouldn't necessarily be the thing that you're focusing on as a designer. As a designer, you want to make sure that you're focusing on the elements of gameplay. What is really the thing that's keeping you in that loop over and over? So even with Borderlands, some of you said the humor. And you're not thinking about the humor from the design perspective. The humor is not the story. The humor is the interactions. And the interactions are the NPCs, how they react when you shoot them, the way the dialogue that's said when you shoot certain weapons at them, the type of guns, the weird things that the guns do. Does it tie to narrative? Yes, it does. However, it's still gameplay mechanics that drive that forward. And that's kind of what I'm trying to point out to everyone. There's a lot of gameplay mechanics here that I want you to start thinking about. The real reason you probably played a lot of games that you really enjoyed wasn't necessarily the story elements. It was more probably there's a certain loop in there of something that you're doing over and over, or something you could challenge yourself and do in a different perspective every time.
Hell, that's the whole point of competitive games.
Yeah, well, yeah, competitive games, that's a given. Hold on, I see a couple of people that were raising their hands in the chat. This is why I prefer microphones, so I don't have to stop and read. You're all the worst. Warhammer 3. Oh man, Warhammer. There we go. Someone mentions a good game. Oh, thank you. That's a Warhammer Online. Yes, a very, very good game. I've been playing a lot of it recently, actually. If any of you grew up playing tabletop games like Warhammer 40K, Warhammer X-Wing, very reminiscent, large-scale armies fighting each other, a lot of strategy, how you build your army, the tactics and where you place them. There's tons of things you can do in that game. League of Legends. League of Legends, yes, there's a lot of different characters you could choose. There's a lot of different strategies based on the character types. They do fall to certain archetypes, though. You have people that are tanks, people that do abilities, you have people that do attack damage, you have people that do hunting with the jungle. So you have a lot of different strategies how you can play the characters. Blah, 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 blah. So what would you think of a game like Mass Effect? I think Mass Effect is a game that has gameplay in between story. That's what I think of Mass Effect. And I think that a lot of choices making that game still played out to be the same way, because it was a very narrative-heavy game that had to tell you a story from beginning, middle, and end. The same way that Anakin hates sand is the same way that Shepard is going to go with the Reapers at the end. They had to change the ending because people got upset about it. It's a little bit silly in my opinion, because the whole game was designed to be you choose how the game is going to end, and it didn't quite become that at the end. But that's because the game is a beginning, middle, end story. And RPG games all fall into this beginning, middle, end story. So that Ring World game that you mentioned interests me, because it sounds like it's a game that's narrative with a beginning, middle, and end based on the choices you make. And that's different than most RPGs are very linear, or give you the illusion that's non-linear. There were choices in the Mass Effect game, like you could say that one alien grumpy guy's race or whatever. You had a choice of certain characters you recruited or not, but the same ending played. It was like a beginning. I think it was like a choice of 3 different endings at the very end. And one of them was a DLC ending to fix that ending that people are upset about. So to me, it's like there were gameplay elements between a story. But that's not necessarily bad. Just make sure that the gameplay elements up to that point are good. That's what matters. Like no one complains about God of War's story. The God of War, no one complains about it, because the gameplay in between it's really good. It's fun.
Yeah.
If the story was really weak and then the gameplay was also weak, you better believe people would complain about it.
Yeah.
That's the reason why a lot of people love to complain about Mass Effect, because the gameplay was okay between the story that was the focus. So when at a certain point the story became out of the player's control, it frustrated a lot of players. It became a big controversial thing a couple of years ago. So, blah, blah. Are you playing the Return of Warhammer? A dude bought a server and is running it free to play. No, I'm actually playing a real game. I'm playing Warhammer 2. Blah, blah,
Ah.
Ares.
Oh, so you talk about gameplay
I
loop.
was just yelling Ares because of God of War.
I
Like,
thought
the
you were
first
actually
one
talking about the game Ares, and I'm like, wow, somebody mentioned
There is a
Ares.
game called Ares?
Everyone's like,
What
yeah.
What about Skyrim? Skyrim's a good game.
Skyrim's a great game.
Skyrim's a very
After
good
you
game.
put enough mods to fix it.
It's Skyrim, Fallout, all those type of games are open world that allow for you to kind of play it how you want. Fantastic. And the great thing about those games are that they do have a story, but you don't really have to pay attention to it. You can play a game how you want. Those are great games that have tons of meaningful choice.
Oh, Breath of the
Mhm.
Wild. is in
Breath of
there.
the Wild, great example. And Breath of the Wild has a very
Mhm.
linear story, but you don't have to follow it. You can do it in
What
any
about
order you want.
the very beautifully
What about Monster Hunter?
done Death
Anyone
Stranding?
kind of Monster Hunter?
Yeah, and Monster Hunter has just a simple loop. You go back to your camp, you build your equipment up for your character, you go fight a monster, and then you do the same loop over and over. And then eventually you fight the boss of the game. And then you download a DLC and do the whole thing all over again. Not necessarily bad. It's the same thing like a looter shooter. You go back to Sanctuary, you get new items for your character, you sell off your old items, you go to a dungeon, you mob a couple of dudes, you kill a boss, you hope an item drops, you do that 20 times, and then you do it in the next area. Those type of games are designed to be loops. That's the analysis I want everybody to start thinking about today. What kept you engaged with the game? Sonic is a great example, hence my background. Sonic was one of my favorite games growing up, and one of the games I played constantly. And it's an extremely linear game. It is an extremely linear game that never changes with the ending. What made me keep playing it? I can theoretically do different paths every time I played Sonic. I could technically do the fastest path. I could do a slow path. I could collect every single thing in the level. I could kill everything in the level. I had options of what I can do. I could collect all the Chaos Emeralds. I cannot do the Chaos Emeralds. I can play with Tails if I wanted to. I could bring in Knuckles, because Knuckles is in everything. I could totally do that. And I had options. And that's
You
kind
could
of the point.
reoccurring nightmares after hearing the drowning noise.
Yeah, you can have that as a ringtone to wake you up every morning, like I did for years.
Jeez.
Oh my god.
I wanted to add the physics stuff in the Portal games was like that just kept coming back, bringing me back. I would play through them and not even try to progress the level, just trying to see what kind of cool things I could do. with
Brandon,
the-
it's fine. Hold on, I have to answer this real quick. Brandon, it's fine. If you're at work, you have to do what you got to do. It's okay. This will be recorded for later for you to watch. David, can you continue what you just said, please? Sorry to
So like I would run around in the levels and not try to progress through the story, but just try to think of what kind of fun, cool things I could do with the lasers and the portals and how I can move around the environment and stuff like that in ways that wasn't necessarily how they intended. Now, obviously, the levels were generally pretty linear. You really only had one way to progress, and they limited what you could do, but it was still a lot of fun to just run around and see what I could do.
Absolutely. And the point of this is not to really talk about a game. The point is I want to kind of hear some of your explanations to why you play these games. I want you to start thinking as a designer. What was in the game that made it so engaging? And think of it from a non-linear, non-one-time playthrough perspective. I use the games like The Last of Us, or not The Last of Us. Well, actually, yeah, The Last of Us, the Tall Tale games, the Walking Dead, and all these games are extremely linear. But are they necessarily bad? The answer is no. It's very subjective. Fun is subjective for gameplay. But as a design, are your choices limited in that game? And the answer is yes.
Oh yeah.
Those games are very, very limited to the point that even if you make the wrong choice, it still plays out the same narrative 99% of the time. And that's kind of my point.
Going back to
Go ahead, sorry.
No, going back to that, I have played Uncharted so many times, and the story is exactly the same. But the choices that you make and the collectibles that you pick up and the combat is so. Pardon?
The in between.
Yes, yes. And that's kind of what Naughty Dog does best is the narrative. Is the narrative brings you in and makes you want to continue the game, even if you've done it before. You want to go ahead.
No, I'm just
sorry.
waiting for you to finish.
Oh no, I'm done.
Well, yes, those type of games are designed to be like blockbuster films, and it's usually like the people that usually enjoy this type of games are people who like certain types of movies. There is a type of individual that will watch the same movie 5 times opening week, whereas another individual may watch it one time. Both people technically got the same value out of the movie, just one is okay with repeating the same thing over and over. Whereas the other one, they got the story. They don't need to do it twice. So for every person like you that played The Last of Us maybe 5 times, there's a person like me that played it once, and I wash my hands of it and say, I know the story. I don't need to play through this again. There's nothing here that draws me in to want to do more. Whereas
but you want that platinum trophy, don't you?
Absolutely not, because I designed those trophies, and I know that they're just made there to keep your butt glued to a seat. Absolutely not. I'm not sucked into that. On the other hand, I actually like games that challenge me, and they give me replay value, and that's a big thing. And actually, Enter the Gungeon is a great example of this. Enter the Gungeon is a game that's very simple, great gameplay loops, and there's tons of replayability. Almost, I don't want to say infinite, but there is such a high level of replayability that in the same day of playing the game, you probably won't get the same 2 guns in one playthrough. And if you do, it's very rare. That's how many different weapons there are in the game. And the whole game is designed around that.
Yeah, my best friend actually adores that fucking game.
It's a great game that shows simplicity with scale. It is a game that has a lot of content, but its loop is always the same 3 things. Go through floors, defeat monsters, gain upgrades, get different guns. That's the same 3 loops in the game over and over, and that's
the great theme
mechanics
song.
do not change whatsoever outside of that.
And I love that game. The problem for me is that like I cannot play it at all. Having an attention deficit, I cannot shoot and dodge at the same time. It's impossible.
And that goes into the whole thing. When does the game become accessible with skill? When does the game become easy and accessible?
I get that. It's just for me, it's problematic because of who I am.
There's a lot to digest there, but the point is, everyone seems to be saying the same thing. They're all saying they're mostly games that involve that you like this certain loop in the game, or some of you may not realize that was what you liked about the game, and that's kind of my point. Start thinking about it from the perspective of what was it that made me play the game over and over? What was the loop? What was the thing that they had me doing over and over that I enjoyed? I didn't even realize I was doing over and over. And even in games like The Last of Us, they have you walking around rooms collecting bottle caps, or not bottle caps, like bottles or whatever. There's an achievement for collecting them. Like, even achievements are ways to push the game forward.
But you did do an achievement.
No, I saw the list. But it's kind of my point. Like, it's like there are ways to keep people engaged with little content. So that kind of gets to today's main lecture point: meaningful choice. So it's an action a player is willing to elect based solely on the information the game provides to you. So it kind of goes to the concept of Enter the Gungeon. You have 2 guns in front of you. Which one do you want to take? The blue gun or the red gun? You don't know what either one does, so you just take a gamble, you take one of the 2 guns. You play the game again, it presents a blue gun and a purple gun. You took the blue gun last time, so let's take the purple gun. You're going to try something different. Or you can play it safe with the knowledge that you already know from the game and use the blue gun again. And the blue gun works like a blue gun, shoots a blue bullet. The purple one shoots a purple bullet. Simple concepts. But my point is, the game offers you information. You make choices based on that information. It's not always random, the information given to you. It sometimes is taught to you, is given to you, and is trained to you. As a designer, this is what we refer to as the loops. It's the things that we give back to our players over and over that keep them doing the same core of the game in a manner that's very easy to digest and very easy and accessible for a player to do. So in fighting games, a great example is that every character has a punch and every character has a kick. Yeah, they all have their special moves, but at the end of the day, the punch button is a punch button and the kick is a kick.
Yep.
That never changes. And once you change that from character to character, you now have an overload or a saturation of things that a player can choose from. But if you always have the same things, it makes it easier for players to take risks and try new things and learn. And then you introduce the special abilities of those characters one by one, or they can always fall back on the defaults of what they know, the punching and the kicking. Simple examples, but this also goes into other games too. You can have sniper rifles being the game's best gun, but the players may choose to use assault rifles because they're just easier, and that's what they prefer. It now becomes a choice that the player makes. It becomes a play style. Even though one thing may be more dominant, it may not necessarily be fun. And that's what I want you to start thinking about as well. The things you give to your player, what is fun versus what's accessible, and what is good versus what's bad. And it's very subjective. But you kind of have to think as a designer what works and what doesn't work for your players. So here's another way to think about it. Can you purposely lose the game? If the answer is no, or I don't know, then it involves zero choice. LCR, the example I gave at the very beginning, where you're rolling dice and moving chips left and right, going with that whole analogy of like, well, how do you tell me how you won the game, and you just tell me you rolled dice good? That doesn't really tell me how you won the game with a viable strategy that I could copy. Whereas the same thing, the game of war, I don't even have to look at the cards, and I could still theoretically win the game. Because I Declare War is just a game that you just randomly just drawing cards and I declare war and having higher value. They're all things based on luck factors. When you have nothing but luck factors guiding your game, it doesn't really allow for choices. And don't get me wrong, I know I'm downplaying luck factors a lot in here, but I don't want you to think that luck factors are unacceptable. In fact, luck in games is actually something that's good, like dropping a rare item or having a crit, having on a weapon, or whatever, or just or well, that's something else altogether. But yeah, we'll just say a random drop in a game. Those type of luck factors make you feel like you have a reward. However, if your whole game's main core is hit a button and you do random damage, that's all luck factor based, and that's very hard to control, and it doesn't feel like something that you have control of. In an instant you don't feel like you have control of something, you feel like you're gambling. And when you gamble at a player's turn, they get frustrated really quick. And that's something you have to think about very early.
Can I ask a question? So in God of War, they actually had a whole stat which was solely on luck. So like, would you consider that? I don't know what kind of question I'm asking, but they had like a stat in.
Would it be critical or something like that?
Yeah, like you can control how much luck you had actually.
Well, that's game luck. That's not player luck, though.
Yes.
I mean,
so game luck is a hard number, and like that just like think of it this way: it's number 0 to 100, right?
Okay.
There's always for every character in a game, they all have 5% chance to get a legendary item of 100, right?
Okay.
That is their base stat on their character. You can choose as a player to modify that number and increase it by 20 points. So the maximum drop for the rest of the game for you could be 25% instead of 5%.
Okay.
It's still a luck factor. It still means now instead of 5%, you have now 25% that something may happen to you. But you chose to take those extra points to add towards modifying that chance and that statistic.
Okay.
That is exposed to you as a player. But there are games that don't expose that to you as a player.
Right.
For example, like you can have a game where you do headshots all day long in a shooting game, and you may not get one critical.
Right.
And that stat's not exposed to you at all. And that's luck and gambling factors to a degree when they do that. And that's kind of my point, is that there's a lot of luck factors that go in games are just literally just a number machine that gets thrown once in a while and you get the magic number. The same
XCOM wants to know your location.
Yeah, like 99% XCOM and you still don't hit something. That's a great example. And that's kind of my point. There's always luck factors in game that make you feel good and bad when you lose.
Right.
XCOM is actually a great example of a game that like actually frustrates me because I love tactical games, but I actually don't like XCOM because of the luck factors. In my opinion, they're scaled too high because exactly that. You have 95% chance to hit something. There's still a 5% chance you'll miss, but you as a player think 95%, that's like almost 100%. This is a no-brainer. So when you miss, the game almost feels like it lies to you when that happens.
Right.
And that's very frustrating when that happens.
And that's something interesting. There's something interesting that like Temtem, which is really inspired by Pokemon, did. All their moves hit. There's no accuracy compared to Pokemon, but they had to create a whole new mechanic to compensate for that.
Right. Somebody's asking about Uno. So Uno, I think I mentioned in the previous class, Uno is the lowest game design that I will allow for a design in this class. Uno is a game that is almost heavily luck factor based. However, you have cards that you collect.
That's still strategy, yeah.
And there's strategy of when you want to play those cards. How you get those cards are luck factors. Like you draw them, or they're just given to you. Those are all luck factors based. But once you have those cards, you can choose when and where you want to play them. And then that's where the choice comes in. So in my opinion, it's the lowest design of meaningful choice. It does have choices, but it is very luck factor based. But I use Uno as the common lowest hanging fruit. If like you're stuck on a design, Uno is the lowest design that I would say you can develop something like. And if you don't develop something like at least in Uno's category, you got to look at all the other designs and see what they're doing and start borrowing from those elements. So anyway, back on point. So another way to think about it, it's kind of like going on a roller coaster. If you like roller coasters, cool. I don't really care for them. But if you like roller coasters or like theme park rides, they are fun. Like I love the Transformers ride at Universal. I love that ride. Like I am one of those people that like simulators. I'm one of those weird people.
I love those too.
Oh, I love those.
But I absolutely love that ride. And I know exactly when Bumblebee is going to come out. I know when Ravage is going to come out. I know when every character comes out. I've been at ride more times. I know exactly every twist and turn. Is it less exciting that I know that stuff? Not really, because I enjoy it. But it never changes. And that's the problem. What games, we are interactive media. And that is a key word I want you to think about. Interactive. Interactive means you do something, not it plays itself. That is not the way games are developed. The games that are developed that way are even told to you that this game plays itself. And it will tell you that in the title. What is it? Like RPG Hero for the phone. That's an automatic RPG game. You don't touch it. It just plays itself. And then come back and level up character.
AFK Hero or whatever.
AFK Hero. Yeah,
I hate that game.
I hate games like that.
Good. That means you're probably a freaking designer. I would hope so. But there's
Mostly when
people
they
that
have an
love that
autoplay
game
button.
because they feel like they did something and they did nothing. Being rewarded is not bad, and that's kind of my point. Games are meant to be an escape for a lot of people. Sometimes it's acceptable, but as a game designer, you're going to see quickly that that's not really a game. It's not a game, at least that involves you designing stuff. It's something that plays itself. So it goes into the whole theme park mechanic. You know where the twists and turns in a roller coaster are, or in the simulator or whatever. Is it less exciting because of it? Well, yes and no. If you are a type of person, if you get entertainment out of doing the same thing over and over, that's not necessarily bad. But since we're interactive media, we want to make sure that we have a different experience every time somebody plays something. So we always want to add in new gameplay, a new loop, a new thing that they can do, a new way to tackle a problem. That's really what makes games different. I used the Sonic analogy very earlier, where I can theoretically speed through the level as fast as possible and just get hit, not care, and get to the end of the stage in like 30 seconds. Or I can play more cautiously and get every single thing in the stage and take the full 10 minutes to go through one stage. I have both options, and I can play either way I want, or I could play a combination of different ways. And it's still the same thing. All I'm doing is just running and jumping. That's really it. But in the end, I choose how I want to run and jump. And that's kind of my point. It's not played any one specific way. You allow for them to play how they want within a parameter.
So it's playing as a wood elf or an Argonian.
What, in Warhammer?
Well, no, Skyrim, but yeah, I mean Warhammer works.
I was thinking the Wood Elves from Warhammer because I just fought them earlier.
Well, no one plays wood elf in Skyrim.
Yeah, no one plays Wood Elf in Warhammer
What are you
either.
talking about?
I love wood elves.
But yeah, but that's a good. But yeah, in Skyrim, you had the starting races, and I believe you started in slightly different stats, but depending on what race you had. It's been a while since I played Skyrim, but that again, that's all choices right there too. Same thing with Fallout. You design your character. Do you want to make a character talks his way out of everything? You put your points into karma. You want to be a character just punches his way out of every problem? Put your points into melee. You want to be
your character to have maxed out luck but lowest intelligence possible? Go right ahead.
And those are all, then it's all choices, and it does change the game. And all that is just a number thing behind the screens. That's just every character will give you certain items, dialogue, or whatever based on a percentage and a number. As long as you hit that number, this thing plays. So there is technically an A, B, C choice for everything. And as a designer, you make those choices. It's when you lie to your player and those choices don't line up to what you have been telling them the entire game. That's when there's a lot of frustration that happens. Hence why I used the Mass Effect analogy earlier, where the entire game told you that this would be your own choice at the end, but then in the end you had the red pill, blue pill scenario at the very end of the game. And it frustrated everyone because everything for almost 3 games felt like a lie. And that's kind of my point.
Like when they told me I could kill Preston Garvey and he just came on back.
Pretty much. And they had to make a whole DLC to fix it. It's
it's something that makes me think of is Far Cry 5. The end of that. You have this choice, it's a perceived choice, but the ending is exactly the same no matter which you choose.
Far Cry games are extremely linear.
Yep, and that's kind of my point. You're starting to think the design of gameplay versus linear gameplay. And this is the first steps of thinking about design. So we're all on the same page. We're doing good. So let's kind of continue along. So I want to talk about a couple of things also that's not. Actually, the definition of insanity. It's a great way to look at it. Doing the same thing over and over and over. Strategy, dynamics, and all that. Random actions, dice rolling, guessing, pop culture, memes. I can go on with a list of things that are not strategy. And are they fun? And this is where a lot of people get this mix up. They think that I'm a game designer. I'm making something fun. Therefore, what I make is going to be okay. Your definition of fun and my definition of fun are two different things. But our definitions of how to fairly win something can always be the same. And that's what I'm trying to point out. So think of it simple. Think of it like math. 2 + 2 is 4, right? For whatever, I would pray that 2 + 2 is 4. I would pray that everyone at least can understand that. Someone, somewhere in some magical land is going to make a game where the entire game is 2 + 2 = 4, and you do 4 damage. And at some magical point in the game, it does 44 damage. That would feel like you're lying to your player when that happens. And it would be a big frustration to your player when that would happen because they don't even understand why it happened. And you can argue and say it's fun, but at the same time, the players don't have control of it. When players don't have control of what they're doing, you're gambling. And when you gamble at a player's turn and they lose or they don't know why they won, it frustrates them because they can't replicate it. And that's a big problem. So luck factors are okay within an acceptable parameter. Choice has to be the main factor that brings in luck. You decided to do this thing on your turn, and it was a luck factor after that. And that's okay. You made a choice to do it versus you had to do it. Making more sense?
Yeah.
It can
I'm
still be
curious.
kind of frustrating.
With like combining luck and choice, say in a game, a player draws 3 cards and gets to choose one. So there's luck in what cards they draw, but there's
a choice of what they make.
Of what they choose of those cards.
And right there, that's exactly what I'm saying. That is a luck factor, but a choice given to you as a player of what to do with the luck factor versus you drew 1 card and you had what the card said.
Yeah.
That's purely luck. But a choice is you draw 3 cards and keep 2 of them and discard 1. That is luck of your choice. And that's still choice. Okay. That's the difference between the two. One you have control of, one you do not. In other words, 21. Yes, exactly. Everything leads to branching paths. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Decision points all lead to different results, different outcomes. I use the Mario analogy very often, the Sonic analogy of you see an enemy, what do you do? And we're talking about like original 85 Mario or 1990 Sonic. You run and you see the first enemy. What do you do?
Jump on him.
You jump. Or you jump over him.
Or you jump over him. What else?
Dash. Spin dash.
Die.
Run away.
You can run away from him. You can die by running into it. There's a lot of different options there. And it's...
You can uninstall.
It sounds so silly, but think about it from a game design perspective. What tools does Mario have? He has running, he has jumping. Those are his main tools.
You said Sonic.
I said Mario and Sonic, but yeah, but...
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
We'll just stick with Mario because it's a little bit easier, and everyone's played Mario or seen Mario in their life. Original Mario, very straightforward. He had running, he had jumping. That's pretty much it. Those were his 2 main abilities he had. He had power-ups, which were, Fire Flower and Star and Mushroom and Extra Lives, but those were all optional. None of those were required to play through the game whatsoever. You can technically be Small Mario and play the same exact game as Big Mario or Fire Flower or Star Mario. However, when you're presented with an enemy, you're given a choice of how you want to tackle it. And that same choice is told to you over and over and over in the game, and you decide as a player how you want to tackle those enemies over and over and over. Do you attack every enemy? Do you jump over the enemy? Do you ignore the enemy? Do you run into the enemy? There's a lot of different scenarios there for how you may play out one simple action. And that's just Mario. And that's just one enemy. You have to start thinking about the combination of things that you teach your player. For example, you know that the spiky shell guys in Mario, the red shells, with the spikes on them, you can't jump on them. They hurt you. You learn that the first time you see them because you probably tried jumping on them from the turtles that you saw previously. And you know quickly, oh crap, that hurts me. So now you have to think about how you're going to tackle those in the future. You learn quickly that if you kick a shell into them, they die. You have to hit them with something or you have to shoot them with a fireball, one of the two. So now you have a new scenario. You have an enemy they could jump on, and right behind it is one of those guys. What do you want to do? And now you start making decisions on your first action that affects your second action. Because the first action was you jumped on a turtle to knock it out of its shell, so you could kick the shell into the second enemy, so you don't get hurt. Decision 1 affects decision 2. You see how there's strategy and how that leads into multiple branching paths.
Right.
That is good game design. And it's simple loops that keep happening over and over, where you can constantly engage your player and ask micro questions to them and not overload them with the analysis of the gameplay. Complicated games always overloaded players. Like whoever's playing Warhammer Online, like me, you already know that game's complicated as hell. Like it's beyond complicated. So if you get a new player playing that game, they're gonna pull their hair out for a good week.
Laughs in MOBA.
Yeah. Same thing with MOBAs, with League of Legends. Same thing, honestly, with MMOs. Like the first week, you pull your hair out trying to figure out how to play it. You usually have friends.
You're gonna get killed.
Yeah, you have friends that kind of like ease you into these games. But yeah, Cries and Mega Man. Yeah, actually, Mega Man's my favorite game, but I don't like to bring that one up as an example because there's a lot of different ways to play Mega Man. In the initial early version, I try to keep Mario as the analogy because Mario is very straightforward. Mega Man has a lot of variations of how you can play. And it asks you that question as soon as you turn it on, like what boss you want to fight first. And it teaches you a lot of things really early. It teaches you about trial and error and patience.
I love Mega Man, honestly.
Would Metal Gear be a good example of that with its variation of choices?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I know I kind of joke about Konami-based games and Metal Gear because I honestly feel Metal Gear is a little bit overhyped for what it is, but that's just me personally.
Oh, come on.
Metal
Gear.
I like the original Metal Gear. I like the PS1, PS2 timeline. I think that those were pretty cool.
That's about it.
After your arm got chopped off and became your twin, it was a clone of an old guy. That was a clone of someone else who got born as a cyborg. It's kind of stupid. It is anime turned into a video game, and it's very stupid when you explain it to people. But it is a fun game. That's why we play it. I would say that Metal Gear does have some really cool elements to it. You could play the game very pacifist. You can technically knock everyone out with tranquilizer darts. You can just kill everyone. You can hide bodies. You can be sneaky like James Bond style, just do gadgets everywhere. You had a lot of variation for how you could play the game. And it actually gives you
enemies into a
rewards
black
on it.
hole. In 5.
Say again?
I think in 5 you could throw them into a black hole like he transported a wormhole.
It turns anime at a certain point. That's why I'm just like, I can't keep up with it anymore. It's as soon as like your twin, as soon as your twin became your brother because his arm got chopped off and it was on a lot, and now he became your twin because of it. I'm just like I'm sorry. This has hit levels of anime I can't keep up with anymore. I'm sorry. Yeah. Akima Senpai, if you're hearing me, please don't hate me for it. Just your games are weird, dude. But anyway, they're engaging, and that's the point, and they're fun. And that's really what matters. Games should always feel fun, and that should always be your first thing that you should keep an eye out for when you first start anything. Why is this fun? Why do you have fun doing this? And why should your player have fun doing it too? And you have to start thinking like that with the choices you give your players. If they're very linear and they're very nonchalant or they're just very blind choice based, it's going to frustrate you, and in turn, it's going to frustrate your player. And you have to start thinking that way. On that same subject, blind choice, it's optional, yes. But if it's a blind choice and you don't really have control of how you handle it, it feels more like blind choice and luck factor, more so than a choice you made. So kind of earlier, like how you were saying, you have an ability to take 3 cards, look at them, and keep 2 of them and discard 1. It is a form of blind choice because you get those 3 cards, you don't know what you're going to get, but you still choose what you want to keep. Versus the whole game is flip 2 cards and match them. That's all blind choice based, and then it's just memorization. And at that point, there's no skill. Memorization isn't a skill. I know a lot of people would argue, say, oh, that is a skill, but that's not a gameplay skill.
It's an
Gameplay
innate
skill is something the
ability.
game teaches you, and you can replicate it. I use 2 plus 2 as an example, and a very simple way of thinking about it. If I teach you 2 plus 2 and ask you what's the answer, you're going to always say 4. If someone says 5 or -2 or whatever,
Fish.
I'm going to say, go get a calculator. It's like,
Fishing pole.
it's kind of my point, is that like games teach you how to play the game. They teach you in the first 5 minutes. They
It's
teach you
a
in the first
house.
hour. Again?
It's a
2
joke
plus 2
from a
house.
comedy thing. 2 plus 2 equals house. 4 plus 4 equals snowman. It's about an idea of like being an elementary school teacher, and you can just say whatever you want, and they'll believe what you say.
Yeah, 2 plus 2 is potato. Yeah, I know. Teaching college kids have taught me I have to be careful about what I say too. Yeah, 2 plus 2 is mayonnaise. I totally get it. But yeah, my point is that the game teaches you a certain way to do things. So the instant the game changes that behavior at any given point, it both confuses a player, retrains a player, and it pivots the way the player plays the game from that point on. And if that's a one and done thing, that's not necessarily bad. Gameplay breaks happen all the time in games. A great example, again, I'm going to use Mario. Mario, we'll say the newer ones, the Gen 10 3D timeline. Mario had normal collectathon style game in Mario 64. Then you had a whole stage where Mario raced a penguin. Did that have anything to do with collecting? No, it didn't. But it was a gameplay break that took all the things that taught you in the game, taught you something new that was different. And then anytime you saw things that had slides on it, you knew that there's possibly a sliding minigame.
It's also super, super frustrating trying to beat that stupid penguin.
Yeah,
You could just slide off the path.
the music
at, like,
was
the first
good.
Part and skip the entire
You
thing.
throw their child over the edge.
But that's kind of my point, is that it's okay sometimes to break the rules and offer different gameplay as electives. The one key thing I want to point out about the whole penguin slide thing that happens, that's only done one time technically forced in the game. And from that point on, it's all elective. You don't have to do any of that for the rest of the game. And there was like 8 or 9 times I think you could do something similar. There's also another one where you got to race one of the Koopa Troopas or whatever. And same deal. One time, don't have to ever do it again.
Unless you make it rewarding.
Say again?
Usually you're right that, throughout games, like for that, penguin stage, like, okay, you do it one time and then it's optional throughout the rest of the games. But, now like they make it like you doing those optional things are rewarding. And when you do them, but when you do them, it gives you like, they give you like a buff or something to make the gameplay later on in the game easier.
Because the funny thing is, now games are getting so flooded with content that people are ignoring content and then complaining about the game. I know it sounds crazy, but this is a thing that you're going to be challenged with as a designer, where people are not going to want to play your game because you have too much things to do in the game. So you have to make everything feel like a reward. Because even playing games is hard, and you have to reward your players for playing the game. It is a psychological aspect of game design that we don't really touch in this class, but it's good you see that now, because that is a big part of game design, where you always have to put a carrot at the end of the stick for a player to follow. And you gotta make sure that they want to eat that carrot every single time. And you have to figure out how to redress that carrot every time it looks enticing. So buffs, cosmetics, additional unlockables, additional content, additional story, additional characters, and I could go on. Different, it's all.
So it's like the treasures in Uncharted. There's literally no reason to collect the treasures in Uncharted except to get the trophy. Versus the chests in God of War, where every time you open a chest, you get a reward.
Yeah, you get
for magic.
Like get a ruin or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of my point, is that like you have in-game reward versus arbitrary rewards, and that's kind of a big thing you have to think about, is like, what do you offer your players for doing the additional? You have to always think, if you want your player to do something that's elective, you want to make sure that they have a reward for doing the elective, because in the end of the day, if it's just work, you don't do it.
Right.
A great example is like Zelda was one of the first ones that started this. Zelda started the fetch quest system. It was one of the first games that ever started that type of idea of game design. And in some of the earlier days, you would do a whole fetch quest line, and your reward would be a thanks for playing game, and it'll be an end screen. It'll be different, and it was very frustrating to most players when that was the reward. Whereas with other games, you got like the best sword in the game. You got like a different armor. You got different
Kingdom Hearts.
aesthetic. And it was
Kingdom
something,
Hearts is great.
yeah, and you felt like you had a reward for the effort you put in. The idea is that any effort that you put into something should be rewarded. Even strategy. Any strategy you think a couple of steps ahead for should be rewarded in some way. I used the Mario analogy earlier about thinking 3 steps ahead of you have this enemy and this enemy and this enemy. How do you tackle enemy 1, 2, and 3? You make decision 1 that leads into decision 2 that leads into decision 3, and that all happens within a course of a split second.
Which is crazy.
And that's kind of my point. As design, what is the loop that you give your players that offer different choices like that? So these are a lot of things I want you to avoid. Blind choices, arbitrary choices, luck factors. These are things I'm trying to get at. Because then you run into a problem of Hobson's choice. This is a very linear design. And Hobson's choice is something you've probably heard in your life, but you never knew this is what it meant. So it really means exactly what it sounds like. Take it or leave it. You don't have a second choice given to you. You only have one choice. The Mass Effect thing with killing, what's his face? I totally forget his name. But killing that guy, and then even if you killed him, guess what? No, you don't. He comes back anyway. Haha, it's you know, there's
Preston Garvey.
Yeah, Harvey, thank you. I knew it was Harvey something. It's common in RPGs where they do this, and it's because RPGs can't make games totally open-ended because they have to tell a story. And this goes back all the way to the beginning when I was asking everyone, what's their favorite game? And I heard a lot of people saying, I like the story. I like reading books. And like, cool. But you're not thinking about like a game designer where if you want your player to play a certain way, you have to make the story very linear, which means your choices have to be very linear too. Cloud can't go punch Sephiroth in the first 5 minutes of the game, even though he shows up.
You will die.
You cannot do that. You can't do that. And even if you want to do that, you find out later that's not even him. It's like, oh, big plot twist, 20-year-old game. Ooh. But my point is, you cannot change the way the RPG plays out in front of you. Even though like you have a guy literally with a machine gun next to you can shoot bullets and can shoot the guy in the head, you know, that they never touch on, whatever. You know, that's always been a big gripe I've had since day one. Literally a guy with a gun can't shoot a character 5 feet away in the head, but he sniped someone else later in the game and killed him on one shot. Never explained, but, you know, RPGs, you know.
Well, it's because the game would end in 10 minutes.
I know, but it's kind of my point is that, like,
Speed
RPG
run
games have to be done a very specific way.
So when you
That's like
say,
Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. When you're, or I think it was The New Colossus. When your dad drags you down to the basement, and like wants you to shoot the dog. Like you can shoot the dog or not shoot the dog, but it doesn't change a damn thing. Yeah, like it's 2 options, but no matter what,
it's the same result. And that's what Hobson's choice is. Where Hobson's choice is you, no matter what decision you make, it always plays out the same linear decision. So even if you made a decision to take the red pill over the blue pill, you still get the same story it plays out. You still get the same gameplay abilities. It doesn't matter. It is a non-critical decision. You either take it or you leave it. And a lot of early game design I see from people when they first start is very much that. You get a stack of cards, we all draw from the stack of cards, and then we do what the cards say. Is there decisions in what doing the card says? Yeah, sure. But did you get to choose when and where you built into those cards? You didn't. Everyone just drew from the same stack, and you hope for the best hand of cards. And now you're relying on both linear and luck factors at the same time. Luck being the cards you drew from, and linear doing what the cards say. You don't really have choices of how you can play out a turn other than just what's presented to you. And that design right there I just explained is Uno. You see how that's your design? And that's kind of my point. Is like I don't want you to have designs that is the highest level of interaction is only what's presented to you at that exact moment. You want to think steps ahead. How do you build into things? How do you combo things? How do you combine elements together that lead to more things you can do in action? Strategy. Okay, continuing along. And this kind of leads into skill versus randomness. This is another thing I want to kind of point out to everyone. I mentioned fighting games earlier. I think in the previous class I mentioned that I like fighting games, Third Strike and all that. And the reason I like those games is because it is a game that asks you a million different questions in a course of 60 seconds between 2 different players or between you and an AI. And the characters all play differently. And every character, you have characters who play similar. You have sometimes characters are clones or whatever, but we'll just keep it vanilla and say you have the big guy, You got the fast character, and you got the average character. You got the Ryu, you got the Chun-Li, and you got the Zangief. You got the three of them, right? All of them play drastically different, but all three of them have the same thing: high punch, medium punch, low punch, high kick, low kick, medium kick. All three of them have different abilities beyond that. That's where skill comes in. Zangief does the most damage of all three of them, but is the slowest. Chun-Li does the weakest amount of damage of all three of them, but is the fastest. And Ryu is the in-between. He hits kind of hard, and he kind of takes damage. Like, he's the in-between. He's the all-around player. You decide what character you want to play, but you start figuring out the skill necessary for winning. And you start realizing that if you are a character that is very, if you're a player who plays very responsibly, a fast-paced character may be good for you because you respond faster than a person would normally. So you can, when one person throws a punch, you're already jumping away and possibly doing a kick at the same time. You're thinking that extra couple of steps of how you're going to react to something. Whereas a character like Zangief is very more slow and more mechanical, only can react as counterattack and only can do certain moves when a character does something. And that's the best opportunity for that character to do damage. Both of those characters technically are played the same exact way, punches and kicks. But then skill starts coming in where you're starting to realize that this beats this because it's faster. But this hits harder in this move because I'm bigger. And you start seeing how all those things start adding and interacting with each other little by little. You start learning what the game is teaching you. And the game teaches you about the basics. Grabbing, punching, and kicking. Those are the basics of any fighting game. Then it teaches you character-specific things. It starts teaching you about then even more advanced things, speed, and even sometimes luck factors. There are some fighting games that have luck factors involved with their characters. I just don't find those to be particularly good fighting games.
What about Smash?
A lot of them are dealing with
I was
that.
just about to mention Smash. To me, is a little bit of a luck factor-based game, unless if you turn off every feature in the game, and that's the only way you can play to not be luck factor-based. And I know people do that, but in its design, what's his face? Kirby creator. I'm totally forgetting his name.
Sakurai.
Sakurai literally said it was a party game from day one.
Yeah.
So I hate
Hero Soccer guy.
So it's like, to me, it's like, I love Smash. I love I could be Mega Man punching Sonic and being at Mario at the same time. It's great. It's like my childhood. It's, like, it's great. Every single thing I wanted, all in one game. But it's technically a game that's always designed to be a party game. So there's a lot of luck factors that kind of happen with certain characters and certain moves. Yeah. And it's not as math heavy. And that's a scary word, math. But there's actually a lot of math that's involved in games like Tekken and Street Fighter. In fact, everything's all up based on math. That's what actually I like about these games. They're technical. If you're to actually do an analysis of a Street Fighter game, there's a whole thing called frame data. And frame data is data of every single move of every single character, how much priority, speed, and time it takes to do one move. And it'll tell you an exact number. And you know exactly in the numbers, as long as that number is higher than someone else's number, it will do damage for that person's move. So if you can study all the numbers of a character, you theoretically know how to counter every single thing in the game. So it becomes a little bit of a memorization game, but it's like split-second memorization. Right. Where a lot of skill comes in. You learn the game.
Sonic Fox.
And that's kind of my point. It's like skill are things that the game teaches you and you learn from the game and you absorb from the game and you build on and iteratively try new things over and over. I use fighting games as an analogy, but we also could do it with the looter shooters like Borderlands. You try a new build to your character. You get different guns and different builds and stat out and go to try shooting new things. You go get a new weapon in a division and see if you can survive longer. Like, it's things like that. You try new things, and the game rewards you based on the skills that you have learned and play styles that you try, and it gives you new things that way. And it keeps engaging you to try new things, to learn new skills. Versus a game that's all luck factor based and all random, you're just hitting buttons and hoping for the best result. You have randomness taking over for you as game design. And that's kind of my point. You never want a game to feel random. Randomness can be controlled through skill. Even things that feel like they're luck factors, as long as a player elects to do the luck factor, then it's easier for a player to decide, hey, I'm going to take the chance to do the gamble versus doing the thing I know is going to do X amount of damage or give me X reward.
Like 50-50s in fighting games.
Exactly. So Hero on Smash is the epitome of luck-based fighting. Yeah, kind of.
I was going to say, Mr. Game & Watch also has a lot of luck involved.
There is a lot of skill involved too. There's a lot.
It is. There is.
He only has like the hammer, but not much else is like very lucky.
That literally decides if you kill the guy or not most of the time.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. I'm just seeing. I'm reading your messages really quick. Goku with the muffin button. Yeah, it's Goku with the muffin button. Exactly.
I love Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Oh, everyone's seen it? I love
All right. So
Yuri hasn't.
So types of randomness that I want to point out. You have output and input. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where randomness in games are okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Sorry. I just said out of turn.
Okay. So you have randomness in games, and that's still okay. As a design model, that's not necessarily bad. But did everybody get a chance to play Sushi Go? That was part of the reason why I wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't.
I did not.
It's okay. For those of you who haven't, I'm going to kind of explain it really quick. So in Sushi Go, you have an event that begins every round. What is the beginning event that happens for everyone?
You get
Dealt the cards.
You're given a random hand of cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do afterwards?
Pick one.
Depends on the
You
card.
choose and you pass.
So interesting thing about that. You are given a random event, being the cards are completely random, and being an input. And that's what I'm trying to point out here. Input versus output. It's given to you as a player, and here is this hand of cards. You now make a decision. What card do I keep? Then you have the next event that happens. Based on the decision you made, a new random event happens where you are now passing that to the next person. And now it's an input and an output. The input being you got cards from the character or from the player next to you, and you made a decision. That was the input portion. And then the output is now you're giving it to the next person. There's input and output of randomness. Notice that both times, these are random events that happen. Both times, you have no control and control at the same time. You have no control of what's given to you, but you have control of what you choose. That is technically fair. Whereas you had no control of what you chose after it was given to you. On top of that, that becomes luck. So imagine, if you will, that same set of cards given to you, the player to your left randomly chooses one of those cards from your hand, and that's what you have to keep. And then you choose to give that whole hand of cards to the next player. You don't have any control of what you're doing at that point. And that doesn't feel fair to you as a player. But you could be given a whole hand of cards, and then you have to choose the best one that you think is good for you, and you're making a decision. So it may not always be the optimal choice, but you're given a decision every single time. You're always being asked a question, and you're always answering the question. And that's what I'm trying to point out. You can still have random things in your games, but you have to have luck factor not be the main point. Even here, input and output randomness is still based around one thing, a decision point. And a decision point can lead to different outcomes based on the decision. That's where the strategy comes in, decisions that you make as a player. Does that kind of make a little bit sense why I want everybody to kind of play Sushi Go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about when I was playing it last night with I think it was Derek. Yeah. I was explaining to him there's a randomness involved in what you get initially and what you're getting from other people, and there's strategy involved of what's going to work best for you, but what's also going to prevent somebody else from doing something. But it also depends on, you've got one full round where everybody goes through, and then you've got another full round. And so there's more randomness involved as well, but the choices you make will affect it more than the randomness if you think about it.
Exactly. So if you totally just pass up on cards that could earn you more points in the game, it could come back and haunt you. And it's a gamble that you make because you decide if you do or don't want to do that, but it's still decisions that you as a player make. And it could or could not help you. And that's kind of the point. You learn what works for the game, and then you start using that to your advantage as you play through. Every time you play, it is a new experience, but you learn from the previous one. That is good game design. And that is what games should be. There should be loops. And that's kind of the whole point of today's lecture. It's all about the loops and the meaningful choices. So, kind of talking about this. I'm sorry, go ahead. Someone said something? I guess not. Okay. So I want to ask about this. what did you feel like you had control of in the game? What felt fair? What didn't feel fair? I want to hear from a couple people like your opinions about this. With Sushi Go.
So at least for me, I like the game a lot. I like the fact that you can have different, like in a sense, you can have different type of builds with the cards, and which will give you more points. And then, but at the same time, like you were saying, you can gamble. And I don't know how many people know, but like with the pudding cakes, like like it gives you a lot of points at the end of the whole match if you have the most of them. So like a lot of people could be going towards that, or you could be playing the short game and trying to get the points through each round, or you could be playing the long game with the pudding cakes, or trying to get the wasabi on plus with a combo card, which is pretty cool as well. And I guess what I had control of was seeing other players, like if they had a certain amount of sushi rolls, and you're like, oh, I really don't have a really ideal card I really need to pick, but I see I have a sushi roll on my line of cards. I can hinder somebody from getting an extra sushi roll, so that way they don't have as many points as I do, where I have a better chance of winning.
That's what I really liked about it, was that you could see what the other players are doing, and you could adjust your strategy as you were going along.
Yeah, it's an open game where, like, you know, it would be different if everybody's cards were hidden, because then you'd have to think about, well, what was available in this hand previously, that I remember seeing. With it being open, you can look at it and go, well, that person's working on this strategy. This person's working on this strategy. I'm working on this strategy. I can't work on mine, like Derek said, but I can prevent somebody else from working on theirs.
Right.
That choice, you know, what maybe for me anyway, be unfair sometimes is like you just get really shit draws and you get, you know, or, you know, it comes around to you and there's just nothing of benefit to you. And there's nothing that'll really hinder somebody else too much. And you're like, well, it's the luck of the draw in this situation. I guess I just have to just pick something.
Just take pudding.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've had a number of times where the last round comes around and I get something that is completely useless and it fills in my last slot. But that's, you know, what was there. I didn't get a choice in that situation. I was forced to that choice. It's a lot of fun. Also,
yeah, now I'm hungry.
Derek decided to beat me.
Hey, you taught me, and I just
yeah, like his first game, I played it before a number of times. First game, he wins.
Right. So it sounds like that everyone kind of took different perspectives of this, and it sounds like that, you know, for the most part, you felt like you didn't have control of some things, but you did with a lot of other ones. You make decisions based on kind of the scenario. But even things that felt unfair to a degree, you still had some control of. Like you were given at least a choice on your turn of what you wanted to do. And that's kind of my point, is even like if a game is unbalanced, you can still have a factor of what feels fair to you as a player, and at least try to elect for the best decision that doesn't give you the ultimate losing condition. So taking away something from another player is a viable strategy. Even if you may not win, you at least have the option to let that player have a dominant winning streak, a dominant strategy. You have a way to at least foil the plans to a degree. And even that is a strategy by itself. Sometimes you can come back and you can win the next round with more, preventing somebody in the previous round by doing something. And that's kind of my point. You had choices given to you. That's what it comes down to. It's all about the choices that you make as a player. If the choices don't mean anything and they always lead to the same random results, then there is no choices there. Or a good teacher. Damn, that hurts. Get out.
No, not you. It was about Derek's.
It was about me.
Beginner's luck. Beginner's luck where I just taught him too well.
Right. All right. So kind of touch on things I said a little bit earlier. The thing that separates us very, very heavily from everything is that we're an interactive medium as design. And that's what I was getting at earlier of like, you could be the type of person that goes and watch a movie 10 times in a row and enjoy it. The same people that play the linear style games and really enjoy that narrative heavy game. However, we as designers and as game development have the interactiveness of the game that makes it engaging. So even games that are linear, like God of War, The Last of Us, and so on, have those in-between moments that allow for you to play the game how you want. And even though it still does the same end result, you're given choices up to that point to how you want to get to that end result. The in-between still matters. And without there being an in-between, you have no separation from something that's non-interactive, which is a movie at that point. Students surpass them. Yep. I mean, I hope so. I hope you all, get in the field and do well. Like, that's kind of what I hope for.
Also, for the whole choose your adventure thing, I cannot be the only one that when you get to a point of a choice, you mark that, so that way if you start going down the other path and it leads to somewhere you don't like, you can back.
Yep.
Oh,
I've
yeah,
done that
yeah.
plenty of times.
I mean, that's
Did
big points of video games.
Totally.
People who play RPGs and will have 30 save files because they want the ability to go back and
make choices
and
make them
we've all done it. We've all done it for the most part. There are plenty of games where, like, I know I'm gonna make a questionable choice and I save right before doing it, and then I do the choice to see what happens. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I reload.
So many times.
It's the ultimate temptation.
Yeah.
It's also the easiest way to get all the achievements.
When some games don't
It
give
is.
the option for multiple saves, they make you have to accept your choice.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like some of the ones where it's a complete one shot. You just have to keep playing all the way through one life.
There's a Tall Tale game based on what you said called Life is Strange.
Yes.
Where the main character had the power to rewind time.
Yep.
And so when you made the choice and you didn't like it, you just rewind the time and choose the other option. But it didn't make any difference though, because
it still tells the story.
Yep.
It's rewind time.
Or Prince of Persia.
I mean, like the original Prince of Persia.
Sands of Time, yeah.
So I don't think I have to keep harping on the subject too much longer because it seems like everybody's kind of grasping what I want to get across today. But another choice to think about is, if I ask you what is the best Pokemon starter Gen 1, and we're saying Gen 1. We're not going to get into
Venusaur.
Yeah.
Bulbasaur in that case.
Charizard.
No, actually,
Bulbasaur literally carries you through the first gyms.
Everyone goes to
Magikarp.
I go water type.
Magikarp, because Magikarp's unstable.
I'm kind of upset that Psyduck isn't up there.
Here's interesting. Already, I didn't even get a chance to even ask a question. Everyone's already shouting what they think is the right answer.
Well, let's go with what we know is the right answer.
Well, that's kind of my point, is that even in Gen 1, they had 150 different Pokemon, and technically 151 if you want to count Mew or whatever, or 152 if you want to count the corrupted data.
Yes.
They'll mess up the game if you saved it. But whatever. The point is, if I were to ask you, when you got to the end of the game, what was your starter team at the end of the game?
Oh, Lord.
Charizard, a bunch of fodder for reviving.
I never played a Pokemon game, so I can't.
It depends on the playthrough.
Oh.
And that's kind of my point.
Not technically, no, because some people, when they choose a starter right off the bat, they try to find other Pokemons that can support your starter.
What?
Yes, sir.
Strategy.
There's always the Pokemon that carries all the HTMs.
Exactly.
Thank God they took HMs out.
So I just knew the first gym was rock, so I just picked water.
So for every character that had maybe Charizard as like their main Pokemon type or whatever, they had supporting ones that were the other elements. For every person that had a Bulbasaur, they probably had other Pokemon that were the other elements that supported it. So you had a diverse team. Maybe some people just went with one type. I hear somebody saying they had rock as theirs, which it's all viable strategies. Everyone has a different way of how they can experience the game.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about it isn't not so much what was the best, because there's a million different versions of what is the best of
right.
Pokemon for you. It's how you choose. You want it to be the best. You chose what is your best team based on your playstyle, based on what you like. And just to say, let's just say all of you had the same exact characters at the end. Every one of you chose Squirtle and whatever. You had Blastoise and you had Magikarp. So all were Gyarados. Yeah, you had a whole team of Gyarados and you had Blastoise. Cool. That was your team. Just because all of you had that same team, you also have to think about the micro variation that can happen.
The HPs,
every one of them can have technically different abilities.
Different attacks.
Everyone got different attacks. So even though you may have the same exact team as like maybe David, who's never played, magically has this one team. When I played to the end of the game, I had the same team as him, but I had totally different moves. I had totally different abilities with the characters than he did. This game right here has a lot of different variations. And the interesting thing about this game is it's dirt simple. This game is rock, paper, scissors. That is what this game really boils down to. They have cartoons make fun of this. Like, that's how simple of a concept this is. However, they have so many different characters that have different variations of rock, paper, scissors that do different amounts of damage, that even if they are weak against something, they theoretically have a chance of winning. Because you have certain factors you can play into their strengths and weaknesses of everything in the game. The point is a game that's made to be something for children still had a lot of variation and had a lot of choices being asked to you. And it is still a game that's widely played today. I mean, there are thousands of Pokemon at this point. Like, there's cartoons, there's anime, there's live action movies with Ryan Reynolds. I mean, there's millions of different Pokemon out there.
Great movie.
Yeah, it's
It's a brilliant movie.
Pikachu, Deadpool is going to be a thing in the next movie. I just can't wait for it. But my point is that, like, you have a lot of variation for how you can play, and that's what makes this game so interesting. It was so accessible that every person has a different story that they can tell from this game. But in the end of the day, you still defeat Team Rocket, you still defeat the Elite Four, and you become the Grandmaster. That is the original ending of Pokemon. It still is the same ending. They have made, of course, millions of different spin-offs or whatever. We're just talking about vanilla. But how you got to that end point was different from every single player. Every person in this room, you're going to ask what they remember doing at that point. They might have tackled the problem slightly different. Led to the same end result, different in between gameplay. Going back to the original thing we talked about originally, even linear games can have in-betweens that offer variety and gameplay differences. And that is what you want to think about when you're playing or developing or anything with design. What are the choices given to you as a player? And what can you do in this scenario? If it's always the same result, you have a very linear game. If you have results that don't matter, it's all luck factor, and that's going to frustrate your player. But if you have factors that the player can control to a degree, understand, and evolve from, that is good design. And that leads to more interesting loops that try new variation of the gameplay over and over. And that leads to replayability, and that leads to good game design. So I want to show a quick little video, but I'm going to do a quick, what time is it right now? Let me see.
Oh, is that Galaxies?
This is Star Wars Galaxies.
Heard a lot of things about
I
that.
remember when everybody got so mad when they put in Force users.
Okay, don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. What I'm going to do, crap, I forgot the name of the website. It's a website where we can all share YouTube at the same time. It was introduced.
Is it Watch Together?
Watch Together.
MyCircle.tv.
I use it.
No, it's Watch Together. That's the name of it. I'm gonna
love the website.
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly create a room. I'm gonna link everyone, and then we're gonna watch this together, and then we're gonna talk a little bit more. So in the meantime, I'll give everybody a quick 5-minute break. Go to the bathroom, grab a drink, and then we're gonna continue here on that. Okay. And I gotta remember.
I heard break. All right, I'll be right back.
5-minute break.
Eden Films. I've watched many of their food videos.
On the top. There.
Thank you.
If you talk to any.
Well,
I remember playing Galaxies for a short period of time just before all that happened.
How Jedi killed Star Wars. Huh. That sounds like something that's serious.
Okay. I just gave the link to everyone in the chat room. Please just jump into this, and then I'll put everyone on mute when we get back, and then we'll watch this video together. All right? Let me know if the link's working. Oh, yeah. I see people already.
Anyone who played old school Star Wars Galaxies?
Yep. I don't know why that played. What the heck?
Someone may have pressed it. Anyone can control it.
Oh, anyone can control it? I didn't know that. Huh.
That's just a serious design flaw.
Hey.
Oh my god. Okay. No, because someone in chat said they had a 50 hours Pokemon save. I just logged on me and see how many hours I have is plus 200.
Jesus.
Jesus,
How does Tommy have all these games?
Did you play competitively? Like, were you trying to breed and shit?
I don't know actually.
Dude, farming takes up hours and
Yeah.
hours. I won't
Well, you gotta
blame you
think-
if you did that.
Especially if you're trying to farm for shinies.
Exactly.
this.
Exactly.
For shinies.
Last year in 2019, I worked a full-time job, 40 plus hours a week as a IT project coordinator. Plus had time for video games and moved and still read almost 200 books.
Jesus.
I read 192 books in 2019.
Jeez.
That's awesome. That's pretty awesome, actually.
So, like, you know, if somebody took that amount of time that I would put toward books and put it toward video games, getting 200
Yeah.
hours in the game, no problem. I mean,
Right.
go look at your Steam list at some of the games you've played. I mean, I've got games where I've got 1,000 plus hours.
I have 600 hours in Terraria.
My Borderland playthrough is over 1,000 by now.
I have 600 hours in Terraria, like 300, 400 in Siege, and probably over 600 in
Even so, if you just play one game for 24 hours, just one game for one day, that's 24 hours right off the bat.
Yeah.
And just do that for 1 week, 24 hours times 7, there you go.
Actually,
There's
after
100 plus.
I think about it, I had about 1,900 hours in Destiny last year.
Like if you like, I don't even want to think about if you look at all my WoW characters over the years and added all that amount of time together, think about how long that is. And I've been playing since the middle of Burning Crusade and was a hardcore raider, progression raider in Wrath and stuff. Like I don't even want to think about the thousands and thousands of hours that I've played that game.
Right.
And I leave and I come back, and I leave and I come back. Like, yeah.
See, when you started though, there wasn't so many quests and stuff. Now, like I just started playing WoW, and like it's flooded with everything. I don't even know what to do anymore besides do dungeons.
Yeah,
honestly.
I mean, it's yes and no. So the quest system has changed quite a bit. There are definitely areas where there are a lot of quests, and you don't have to do most of them. Like you can go into an area and you don't have to do them. In the old days, you had to do them all because that was the only way you were going to progress. And there were less of them in some areas, and some of them there were more than there are now. But yeah, I mean, like I'm leveling an alt right now. I finally unlocked Mechanome, and I'm playing a Mechanome Warlock.
Nice.
And
Alliance player. Ew.
I just unlocked Volpera with this rep grind.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm right there with you.
I want to unlock Moghat Orcs because I want to play a hunter on it, but I don't have a 120 horde. The closest I have is a 110 mage, and I just don't. But I've played both. I've mained one side or the other. I'm playing Alliance right now because my Demon Hunter's Alliance, and I really like the Mechanomes. I have since the beginning. But yeah, no, like there are definitely areas where there are more quests than you need to do. Like I'm running through I don't remember the name of the zone at the moment. And like I'm doing all the quests, but I'm almost, probably within another dozen or so quests, I'll have out-leveled the zone.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Be there anymore.
Well, it's the 100% experience bonus that's really screwing with it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like I'm fine with that because I want to get up there. Like I've got a 120 boost from pre-ordering Shadowlands, but I don't want to boost, my my Mechanome because one, I need to learn how to play a Warlock. I'm going to play the Warlock.
Heritage Armor.
They're really fun. That's actually my main.
But I'm going to play a Demonology Warlock. Like my Hunter is a Beast Hunter. I don't care if people say something is better. In my opinion, Beast Hunters are the best hunters. End of story. I play a Hunter because I want
right? Dude, stick with it, man.
I play a Hunter because I want cool pets. And Beast Hunters get cool pets.
Well, then you're really going to love the Demonology Warlock because that's all it is. And it's very totem strategy based.
Yeah. Okay. I've been running around as a Demon Hunter for quite a long time, so.
guys are nerds.
Yes.
I mean, aren't we all
guilty?
What aren't we here to make
our
make these
own
things
I mean,
these video
I
games?
literally have binary code tattooed on my arm. Yes, yes, I'm a nerd.
Jesus,
Like,
my man.
you're gonna
You're
make
the
me
man,
have to-
David.
Fucking got Ezio and shit like all right here.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Of course we're
Damn right
nerds.
we're
That's why
nerds.
we're
I
on
have
the game.
42 on my
That's why we're
arm.
here.
Start inserting chips in your heads.
Hey, I would do it tomorrow if they'd let me and it worked.
Right?
I'm
down.
I don't know about all that, man.
Okay, so I'm going to start things up. So I'm going to put everyone on mute real quick, and we're going to get this going, all right?
Okay.
Alrighty.
All right, so see you all in a minute.
If you talk to anyone who played old school Star Wars Galaxies, they'll tell you that the combat upgrades and the new game enhancements ruined the game. But really, it was Jedi. Not so much Jedi, but how the developers handled Jedi in the game. Some people might not remember how it went down, and some people probably have no idea what the hell I'm talking about because they never played the game or knew it existed. Star Wars Galaxies was actually better than the old Refund Me. Now, I could go on for hours about every aspect of this game, but I'm only going to touch on some of the more prominent points of the game, and then some of the flaws, and then, finally, the most polarizing profession in the game, Jedi or the Force-sensitive character slot. So that's what this video is going to be about, the Jedi business. Now I can't format a video or a script to save my life, apparently, so I found that the history of Star Wars Galaxies and all the Jedi business that went down roughly goes along with the 9 circles of hell. So we're just going to go down each level through the history of this game, and it's going to fit perfectly. Limbo, the absence of God's presence. It all started back in the year 2000 when LucasArts partnered with creators of EverQuest, Virant, and Sony Online Entertainment. They announced that they were making a Star Wars MMO that took place in the original trilogy, not the prequels. And once the beta came out, players enthusiastically tested this game, and they actually gave a bunch of feedback. Unlike nowadays, where every single game is in early access, and that's basically the release. And if you pre-ordered a game, you got these goggles. You could tint them whatever color you wanted, like rose color. You have rose-tinted goggles. So before we talk about the Jedi, I'm going to talk about how amazing this game from my childhood was and how it had no flaws whatsoever. Lust and gluttony, as in I'm lusting over this Twilight dancer and have my first boner, and gluttony, as in I'm skipping school to play this game. So the game comes out, and it turns out it's a sandbox MMO. It had shit like player housing, you could play as all kinds of races from the Star Wars universe. But the cool part about the game was there were dozens of professions, and you could multi-class with your profession points. You could pick between 2, 3, 4.
Are you sure someone paused the video?
I think it was him or somebody else.
Or however many professions you want to dip into. And no one had to go up the same skill trees. You could specialize in specific things that you wanted and be your own type of class. You could be a rifleman that was also a droid engineer who smuggled on the side. You could be a bounty hunter who tamed and rode rancors who smuggled on the side. You could be a Tarasca Sea master, which was Kung Fu of the Star Wars universe. Could be a Tarasca Sea master who is also a master doctor and dabbled in cooking. You could be fucking Wong Fei Hung. You could be Trandoshan Wong Fei Hung, who smuggled on the side. So there are a bunch of professions, and pretty much everything had some sort of effect on the economy. The whole game was an amazing social hub. Like every cantina, city, and planet had their own communities. And you could remember some players by name. Like it was actually close knit, but there were a bunch of people playing. It was the craziest thing. Some other cool stuff in the game. There were multiple vast planets in the galaxy where you could build your houses or explore, do your erotic role play. You could drive land vehicles like swoop bikes and land speeders, and eventually you could fly starships like X-Wings, TIE Fighters, and Corellian cruisers. The PvP in this game was intense and heated AF, as the kids would say. You could either be neutral, or you could select to join the Rebels or the Imperials, and there were PvP faction rewards, such as Imperials got ATSTs, which were completely fucking OP, and Rebels got like a really good backpack or something. Man, that was actually kind of shitty. Speaking of PvP, it wouldn't be uncommon that hundreds of people would get together to raid a city of the opposite faction, and it would just be an all-out war, and you just could not go to that town if that was your faction's town. Or you could get hundreds of people and just go to an open-world dungeon or try to hunt down crate dragons on Tatooine. Not even trying to get anything. Like, you were trying to get a kill on a crate dragon, and just hundreds of people would be like, yeah, sure. So those are some of the great things about this game. And for some of the shit, the combat was jank as heck. Basically, you queued up all your combat thingies, and there was like kneeling and prone and standing positions, and there was a health bar, an action bar, and a mind bar, and they all did different things, and depending on which part of the body somebody hit, did damage to that. And the game was focused around keeping people like kneeling or prone. It was stupid. There was a general lack of content in terms of missions, dungeons, and story. Pretty much all the missions you took were from a mission terminal, which just told you to go kill some enemies and the nest they come out of. And once you kill the nest, you got some credits. There were frequent server and login issues. Dungeons and farming spots in this game were not instanced. It was just in the world. Anyone could go to them, and you had to share. And there was no real answer on the Jedi class, when they were coming or how to obtain them. Which leads us to the next level of heck. Greed. I want to be a Jedi and fuck you. So people were enjoying themselves with the game, even though there was a lack of content. It was kind of buggy, but people were happy. People were playing the professions that they liked. People made their own fun because it was a sandbox MMO, and people liked it because it was Star Wars. Star Wars does really weird things to the brain. It's like a drug or a cult. No one knew how to become a Jedi, and it was pretty great. The whole mystery behind unlocking Jedi made the game better. Any vague location or odd item with no practical use made people think it was somehow linked to a secret quest line of becoming a Force user. It's like the Egyptian hieroglyphs. They could have meant anything. They could have contained the secrets to the universe or immortality, but then they found the Jedi holocrons. I mean, the Rosetta Stone. So it came to Jedi. The developers faced these issues with implementing the class. Number one, everyone wants to be one. It's a Star Wars game. That's a given. Number two, Jedi are supposed to be rare, since this game takes place between Hope and Empire. And number three, Jedi are supposed to be OP. Well, they aren't exactly OP. Really, it wasn't until the prequels that the Jedi were an OP as heck class. Like, if Luke was as strong in Return of the Jedi, they'd just be like, hey, just go in there and grab Han. And if anyone stops you, just murder-relate the whole fucking place. Because that's exactly what happened in Star Wars Galaxies eventually. A Jedi would show up and literally murk an entire town. So the developers didn't really know how to implement the Jedi. One of the ideas they had, mentioned by Raph Koster, one of the lead developers, said he wanted a temporary Jedi class. Players could roll a temporary, volatile, force-using, lightsaber-wielding character and kind of play in secret. And the more they used their powers or their lightsaber in public, the higher their notoriety score would go up. And once your notoriety starts hitting certain levels, the game would start sending bounty hunter NPCs or player bounty hunters to come and hunt you down and kill you. It would start out kind of easy, but the higher your notoriety would get, it would start sending higher profile bounty hunters after you, like IG-88, Bosk, and Boba Fett. Until finally Darth Vader himself would show up in the goddamn Lambda shuttle and murk you in one shot. So there would be a definitive death end for every single temporary Jedi, but depending on how far you got, your other characters would get heirloom rewards. Like, you could be at a campfire while you're traveling through Corellia and make your Force Ghost show up saying, yo, look, I got to Darth Vader and I got my Jedi Force Ghost here with me. So, unfortunately, they didn't use that idea, and it probably would have been way cooler than what they ended up doing. They decided that Jedi should only be obtained by the most worthy players in the galaxy, who aim to experience every aspect of their game, like literal chosen ones. So they set up these hidden checkboxes or flags that players need to hit based on the Bartle personality chart. Now, this thing was made by the guy who developed the first multi-user dungeon. It kind of just creates a field where every type of player would land based on how they play games. So some of the checkboxes would include things like visiting the highest location on a planet, using a specific social note on another player, killing a certain creature on a certain planet, engage in 5 duels, master this class, enter this battlefield, visit this point of interest from the films, and so on and so on. But the specific things that you needed to do were based on your character, and they were different from every single character that was made. So if one player by chance somehow became a Jedi and accidentally hit all these flags, they could not for the life of them give another player an accurate guide on how to become a Jedi. Or one player might need to slash hug somebody to mark a checkbox, another player would need to reach the highest point on Corellian. So this is kind of a pretty cool idea, in theory. I don't think it's as good of an idea as bounty hunters hunting down Jedi during the Galactic Civil War, but it works out a little bit. Problem is, the developers could not work this kind of flag or checkbox system in with the way they stored data in their servers. It just couldn't work in the amount of time they had before marketing said, yo, you gotta get this game out now. So they said, well, what the fuck? How are this is the way Jedi's gotta be. Like, what are we gonna do? So they said, just make it so players have to master some professions and the order is random. So that's what they did. So people are playing the game and no one's got a Jedi yet. And the marketing team from Sony Online Entertainment comes up to the developers. And they say, how long until we see the first Jedi? Developers look at the progress of the players and they do some math and they determine not for about 8 more years. That's probably when we're going to see our first Jedi.
Never tell me the odds.
Marketing says, fuck that. We need a Jedi by Christmas because Christmas is going to sell games and Jedi are going to sell games. So marketing said, we need to drop hints to the players so we can have some Anakin Skywalkers running around so people buy the game. So the developers came up with the idea of Jedi holocrons. And girl, that sweet, sweet holocron grind. Jedi with a stupid wannabe poser pop star, and a little dwarf and a woman as a first Jedi? Buh! I chanced the server. You are a fucking stupid poser pop. I hate this how you always posing like a rock star. I kill your Jedi when I see you. You damn poser pop. It's November 2003, and the first Jedi character is finally achieved. Everyone flips their shit and starts asking them a lot of questions. She eventually reveals everything that she did, and it's posted online. She told everyone that she was just playing the game, she had mastered a couple professions, and was leveling up something else, when she came across a Jedi holocron that dropped from a really high-level mob. The holocron straight up told her, master the Ranger profession. So she dropped another class and mastered Ranger. She got a second holocron, and it told her, master something else. She dropped Ranger and mastered that other thing. Same thing happened with the third one, mastered another profession, and then the fourth holocron said nothing. So she mastered a couple more things, and the path to Jedi was open to her. And of course, it didn't take long for people to figure out what the hell was going on here. The professions were the key to Jedi, and Jedi holocrons became as popular as Beanie Babies in the 90s. People followed the exact pattern that this other girl did in order to get Jedi, and they did not get it. People started realizing, once they started getting these holocrons, that every single character had a different order of professions. So here are the issues with Jedi holocrons and why it fucked everything up. Number 1, you had to find 3 Jedi holocrons in order to figure out which classes you had to master. This was a problem because holocrons were insanely rare and only dropped from the strongest enemies. And if you remember, the game is not instanced, so any high-level mob that was rumored to drop these holocrons were farmed 24/7. So if you were an entertainer or a droid engineer, a doctor, some non-combat profession class, you were fucking screwed, and you couldn't get Jedi holocrons unless you paid absorbent amounts of money. Number 2, master every profession on the skill list in order 3 times. In theory, this would unlock Jedi because you would hit those 3 professions at some point without ever looking at a holocron. Problem being, mastering a profession could take weeks or months. And there were over 30 professions. So did people actually do this? Like I said, Star Wars does weird things to the brain, so probably, yes. And they probably died. Number 3, buy a Force-sensitive character slot already achieved by somebody else on eBay, which was probably totally legit. This is what really killed Star Wars Galaxies. Now, Star Wars Galaxies would stay alive for a very long time, but this was the end. Just no one knew it yet. Again, people will tell you the combat upgrades and new game enhancements killed Galaxies, but that's like saying cancer killed Eddie. And then I'd say, no, I think it was chain smoking 10 packs of cigarettes a day for 10 years that killed Eddie. And then they would be like, no, it was the lung cancer that killed Eddie. It wasn't the smoking, it was the lung cancer. What are you, stupid? Harrison, the greatest MMO to ever MMO. So marketing said have a Jedi by Christmas, but what they really had was people pissed off about holocrons and just going crazy. Communities falling apart. You have other people dropping the professions they liked playing in order to pursue other professions that they needed to master just to unlock Jedi. And you have people canceling their subscription because they just wanted to be a Jedi. They were writing the game out, and they really hated the way this was being handled. It was the beginning of the end. Around the same time, the WoW closed beta goes live. So people were not only annoyed with holocrons, but they were also experiencing the truth. In multiple MMOs like FF11 and Star Wars Galaxies and whatever the fuck else, I didn't play much else, started talking shit about WoW because they realized, damn, this is some fun shit over here. And as a huge Blizzard fan all my life, I was looking at WoW and I was like, yeah, I think that's what I'll play now. Violins. The path to Jedi gets easier and easier, and WoW is now an open beta. Oh shit. So there were a few Jedi, they were pretty rare, and they were extremely powerful, and people were still annoyed. People were still searching for holocrons, well into 2004. And eventually SOE realized this was a problem, and then they changed the path to Jedi entirely to be a whole nother grinding quest line. So you started seeing more and more, even though it took a lot of grinding. They were still really strong, and people still didn't like it. World of Warcraft then goes into open beta, and people are starting to make the change and saying, okay, I'm canceling my subscription because when WoW comes out, that's what I'm doing. It wasn't just WoW pulling players away from SWG. Star Wars Galaxies pushed players out with this bullshit that they were doing with Jedi. Then November of 2004, 1 year after the first Jedi showed up in Galaxies, World of Warcraft is released, and as you can imagine, it starts to suck the life force out of every MMO in the market. Galaxy's subscription numbers dwindle, so SOE panics, and they decide they need to make a change to their business model. And microtransactions weren't as big as they are today, so going free-to-play wasn't on the board. So while Galaxies was in its death throes, they made a rewrite to their entire combat system. Fraud. Time to make the game more like WoW, I guess. These are what are known as the combat upgrades. When you hear people talking about they want to play SWG EMU because it's pre-CU, they're talking about this. In short, it kind of made it more like WoW. It introduced a numbered level up system, which wasn't there before. You just kind of had professions, and each skill tree and professions gave you certain stats. It simplified the armor and weapon types. It changed experience points. Statistics that you had were more like WoW. It just introduced a bunch of changes that players really did not like. It was widely rejected by players, and it made even more people quit. In order to complement the players for staying, SOE gave players plaques, combat upgrade plaques, put in their house, which is pretty good. And then later, when they realize the combat upgrades are not going that well, they do another rewrite of the game. Overnight, 35 professions, all with the purpose in the sandbox economy where you could multi-class to your heart's content, became 9 archetype classes based on your favorite players from the movies, such as that medical droid, a slut, Leia in disguise, Leia not in disguise, a slut. Jedi became a starting class and they were on par with everyone else, which isn't necessarily a problem. You know, if other combat classes fought Jedi a lot, they'd find ways to fight a Force-sensitive character. But this is still between New Hope and Empire. You do not have a bunch of Jedi running around during the Galactic Civil War. It just doesn't happen. You gotta respect the law. Oh yeah, and any other professions that did not fit into one of these 9 archetypes were just scrapped altogether. It had fully become a cookie-cutter MMO that Galaxy's players were trying to avoid by sticking with SWG, but the new game enhancement version of SWG actually remains live all throughout 2009 until they shut down half their servers. And then in 2011, they closed everything. For some reason, I don't know what happened in 2011, so that's where it ended. Jedi went from a total myth.
Yeah, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything.
To Beanie Baby craze.
Since there are more people collecting than there are beanies, it makes it more difficult for every person to get every beanie. And so the price people will pay for a beanie they must have goes up. It's a simple case of supply and demand.
To fuck, there are way too many Jedi and they're OP, and God, I hate this whole process. I'm playing WoW now. Into fuck, everyone's leaving, rewrite the game. Fuck, people didn't like that rewrite the game again, and just make Jedi starting class, because I think that's what pissed everyone off. But by that time, it was already done. The damage was irreversible. So that's kind of the story of Jedi and Star Wars Galaxies. Kind of the whole development cycle on Jedi on the developer side and how it was received by the players. I have played Star Wars Galaxies EMU, but it's not the same. It would need that thriving community from 2003, which obviously would never happen again. I don't know if a new Star Wars MMO would ever top the experience I had with this game. Hey man, if another good Star Wars MMO comes out again, I'm all about it. That's it. Goodbye forever. Subscribe.
Okay. Everybody hear me?
Yeah. Sure.
Yep.
All right. So, as you can see, Star Wars Galaxies had a game with tons of choices given to their players. They could play the game how they wanted. And then as time went on, the game kept nosediving because they tried to make things more linear and more streamlined. And the problem with that is it introduced a lot of Hobson's choice. You only could play the game in one way, to the point that they made it like, what was it, like 3, 6, 9, 12 archetypes of characters at the end, where in the beginning they had like almost infinite combinations they could do. And that's what kind of made the game very linear, and it ultimately kind of killed the game to a degree. And it was very frustrating for players because the ones that played it from the original days played in a certain style, and then it's, as the guy said, you're screwed. You could not get that thing because of the way the game was being designed. It was being designed in a very one-dimensional,
killed their flow.
A linear way. Again, Hobson's choice. And I like to show that video off because it's a game that you would think, being such a big franchise, such a big thing, that it should have had more choices to their players. And to make it more accessible, they had to go back and take away. But by doing that, they frustrated their core audience and made the game almost an isolated experience for anyone that played it. And ultimately, it just slowly killed the life of what the game was. It was a game about choices, and they took away the choices from the players. This is what is very important as being designers. It goes back to what I was saying before. Don't lie to your players. Make sure that things that you taught your players or are teaching your players, you don't take away from them. It's okay to modify
kind of like
things.
what Fallout 76 promised us, but turned out to be
Oh
crap.
God.
With no choices whatsoever.
But now the game is now what you wanted. It took them like a couple years to get there, but now it is that. And
When you get the Wastelanders.
There's a lot of hiccups that happen with these type of games where you tell your audience one thing, you give them an arm, but unfortunately, it makes it very difficult for your players.
Right.
Which game promised. So, kind of to wrap up today's lecture, the meaningful choices are essential for good design. Without them, you're just making a game that plays itself. Luck factors, randomness, and these are all things that frustrate your players. Luck factors in games are okay, but think about it in an acceptable amount. You want your players to be able to choose how they want to do things, not force them to do things. Also think about the input and the output of the randomness you give them. Remember, decisions come in, decisions come out. That's how it should always result. It should never just be random into random. It should always have some sort of decision output or input that comes from choices that are made from the players. So before I end today's lecture, any questions about anything or anything that we went over?
I think so.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, tomorrow we have a lecture. Tomorrow we're going to go over the documentation portion of lecture. It'll be a relatively short lecture, probably be done within an hour or so. It is Friday, so I try not to eat up too much of your time. But we will go over the documentation and hopefully kind of get everybody on the same speed with that. And I will try to get this video up at least by tonight or sometime tomorrow for anyone that missed this. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, wait, hold
Thank
on,
you,
hold on.
sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is it
Have a good
5
day.
p.m.?
Also,
Wait, hold on. Someone had a question.
I have a
who was
question.
talking?
So out of all the stuff that we should have done for our assignments, what should we have marked off already, for the meeting?
So I had a couple people message me about this. So some educators in the program will mark your professionalism down if you don't hit mark as complete for every single assignment. I only care about the assignments that are weighted. So the tests and the actual assignments. You don't do those, you don't get grades. I know that the lectures have mark as complete, and some of you didn't hit mark as complete. I don't really care if you mark as complete or not. I care if you're here in the classroom when I'm doing lecture. That's all I care about. So the only things you need to mark as complete are the tests, because you did them, and the assignments when you turn them in. And those get automatically resolved when you do them. Other than that, whatever, it's on you.
All right, sounds good.
That's all I care about.
Thank you, sir.
All right, what was the other question? Someone else had another question for me.
I just wanted to know, we have class tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Okay. At 5 p.m.
Yes, 5 p.m. So it's always 5 p.m. is lecture. And as I mentioned in Discord today, just so I'm verbally saying it now, I always put the password for the Discord sometime earlier in the day, around noon o'clock, so that you see it on Discord and it'll be in the Zoom password section. I also have that section you can't chat in it anymore, so it doesn't get lost in a saved text. So all it's going to be there is just me posting passwords. If for whatever reason the password's not working, whatever, I will probably know about it before you. But chances are it's probably because I haven't launched the classroom yet. I had a couple of people earlier today saying they couldn't get into the classroom. It's because I didn't launch it. So you have to at least wait till I launch it before you put in the password. But I usually launch it within a half hour before starting class. So usually
Is it always the same Zoom link?
No, it's a new Zoom link every time. So go on FSO and look at the link and the assignment for lecture 2, 3, 4. And as the lectures come out, there's going to be new links in each one.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So any other questions?
I have a question.
What's up?
Can I still mark that I was in the meeting, but can I watch it later? Because I'm normally working around this time. Right now, I'm at work.
I just said that a few minutes ago that I'm going to upload this and I'll drop the link in Discord by tonight or by tomorrow.
Okay, because I had missed one, but I had watched it later. But you can't go back and click the button saying you've completed it.
Well, again, I mentioned it's not a big deal if you've completed it or not, so don't worry. I know some of you are working as this time goes on, so if you can't make it to lecture, it's okay. Because I know circumstance happens for everyone. But if you have the time, come to lecture, and if not, watch the lecture later when it goes live. I post them in a Discord room, so just check the Discord room from when I put a YouTube link.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, then everyone, have a good evening. I will talk to you all soon, and I will see you all tomorrow.
Good evening. Have a good evening.